What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Evening Alpha. I'm your host, Todd Wanish, 26-year veteran of the comic and animation field. And man, I gotta be honest, I'm really excited about tonight because tonight we have, we have Zeek from the Fringe. If you don't know about the Fringe, I'm gonna give you just a bullet point. The Fringe is a world building project, and you know how we love world building projects, but it is not just any world building project. These guys are building a literal world via incredible sci-fi filmmaking, and so I'm dying to learn more. Zeek, welcome, man.
Man, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, dude. So tell me about the Fringe.
Gladly. So I am by trade, similar to you, I'm a filmmaker. I'm most known for a film that came out, 3 or 4 years ago now, called Prospect, starring Pedro Pascal. It's a sci-fi Western, and it was my first feature film, a little indie movie, but it has a very kind of deep, dense, detailed world, and particularly it went on Netflix during the pandemic and garnered a cult following, the silver lining of the pandemic for us. And so the Fringe is kind of our next move after doing that first feature film, which we'll kind of get into, the IP discussion in a second, which is very much at the core of what we're doing. But just to kind of get into like the sci-fi side of it, the Fringe is a new cinematic universe. It's to us, it's the outskirts of the known galaxy. It's the Wild West. It's a deep world. Think Star Wars, more gritty and grounded. It's kind of a spiritual, if you're familiar with Prospect, it's sort of a spiritual continuation of that vibe, but a bigger, weirder world. And we're launching this universe by selling NFTs called Drifters. And they're characters in the universe. Drifters is like the term given to this class of space explorers by the sedentary people back at home, but the people who are willing to make it out to the Fringe, wear the Drifter name as kind of a badge of pride. We're talking hunters, trappers, miners, engineers, bounty hunters, pirates. These are all freelancers who are kind of looking for opportunity in a place that's largely lawless. And they're also concept art for the first movie in this cinematic universe. The artwork was made by Laurie Greasley, who is a kind of a sci-fi NFT artist, but he actually did the concept art for my film Prospect. And so he's essentially making this NFT art with the same kind of mindset as concept art. It's highly detailed. Everything in this other world. Let me see. Actually, this is where I'd like to try to share some images. We'll see if I don't screw this up. Hold on.
No, you got it.
Okay, let's see. From my computer. Oh, you know what? Sorry, it's not in PDF format. It probably has to be like, I can't share JPEGs.
You could if you share your desktop.
Sure. Yeah. I got nothing to hide.
just make sure the porn tab is closed. We're fine.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
Okay. Am I sharing?
Not yet.
Okay. Sorry. I'm gonna try one more time. Oh, it's sorry. You know what? It's a permissions thing. It doesn't worry about it. Anybody, you can go to fringedrifters.com and see the art. It's all good.
Here, I'll do this for you because I can do this pretty quick.
Yeah.
How's that?
Oh, nice. Yeah. There we go.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So, look, we have two main ambitions with this project. The first is that we want to create a major sci-fi franchise that's completely independent of Hollywood, and that is controlled by its creators and its fans, the community. And the second part is we are, much like you guys, wanting to use NFT and Web3 as like a straight up new storytelling medium. The NFTs are like the first chapter in this larger story that the movie will eventually continue. Mm-hmm. And, as you mentioned, we're calling this a world building NFT project. Like our most hardcore members will actually get to contribute to the world. for example, we're going to be hosting a regular schedule of what we're calling labs. Like there's going to be a spaceship lab where we, bring in the 3D modelers and the concept artists, but we also bring any interested community member, and we're going to, bat around ideas on how spaceships would work on our universe, design, inspirations, really get into it and actually develop spaceships together with our community. And
That's
then
awesome.
And then everybody, and that's, I'm not everyone's going to want to spend hours and hours a day, as part of this project, but then anyone will be able to vote on sort of the results of the lab, and, which spaceships actually end up in the movie, which spaceships might end up as NFTs, which spaceships will actually be built as physical sets, which is, another big part of our project is you'll get to see this whole film that we're, collectively making come together with, live streams and constant updates. But I mean, I think, the thing I'm the most excited about is like when we made Prospect, we did it in a unique way. We had a budget of about $3.5 million, which is not a lot of money for making a sci-fi movie with an original world. Mm-hmm. And kind of our solution was to open up our own production design shop. We
kind of like a WIDA, right?
Yeah, like a DIY version, like a small version. I grew up totally as a Lord of the Rings kid. Like I watched all 12 hours of those behind the scenes numerous times.
Yeah, you and I both.
It's like my dream was to achieve that sort of creative utopia, which is what we did. Just in a little slice with the Prospect Shop. And for me, it's like the Web3 community is like taking that shop mentality, that community mentality, and just expanding it, to a larger, base of people. But like I Hollywood, just the way the system works, like you hire, a production design shop for a few months and then they bounce the other project. You hire crew members for a few weeks, where what it gets me really excited is building a collective in a community to actually empower world building. And it's something that's already like started, and we've seen how it works in the Discord format, where you throw out a creative prompt, like, what does a pair of headphones in the Fringe look like? And, you get like 100 ideas. And I thought I'd seen every retro pair of 70s, 80s headphones. And there's just like so much amazing stuff that when you have like the power of like a committed fan base on board, that I think can really just revolutionize, the way universes are built and sci-fi is created. 100%.
And I'm really curious to kind of know like what triggered you to do this, because like from me and my background, I was an animation director, did my time at Cartoon Network. And this was way back in the day. And I went down the path of the pitching, and we're creating pitch Bibles and animatics and story Bibles and storyboards, and going through a similar process, but in my own animation. And I got to the point where we were talking to people who I won't dox because they're fairly well known. And basically the people who could greenlight a show, right? And they were super interested. And when we started talking numbers, I was shocked to realize that basically what they were offering was a better paying full-time job working on something that you made. But beyond that, you weren't getting pretty much anything. On top of that, when I started talking to some of the other creators, because I did my due diligence, and these are people who had from outside looking in, they were famous. Yeah, their names, I knew who they were as a fan, and in the animation community, and had all their the interviews. And when I talked to them, I noticed the one thing that I noticed was that they really weren't happy, or they didn't appear to be happy, right? And so the combination of having conversations with the guys who were actually doing it, and then knowing what they were making, I was like, and how it was, it was being set up for them. That kind of put the nail in the coffin for me personally. I was like, I'm out. Like, I was like,
I'm sure, and like your community here is actually probably more like savvy to this issue than a lot of people, but like, I want to make sure to like kind of catch people's attention, because I know this sounds like a little bit of inside baseball. This sounds like a little like kind of boring behind the scenes stuff, but like this is how Web3 revolutionizes filmmaking.
100%.
Right here, because
100%.
Every director, every creator is forced to surrender their intellectual property when they make something. And that is 100% why I'm here. It's like, I don't own Prospect. I don't own my movie. I spent a decade investing in this world, writing numerous drafts. And I sold it. If you calculated my time, I sold it for like way less than a minimum wage job. And so, we made Prospect, and it's been relatively, successful for a small movie, and we're so proud of it. But, and it did well on Netflix, and I've had numerous meetings at Netflix, and it's coming to that realization. It's like, oh, so this can just get me a job as a full-time Netflix employee, essentially.
Basically,
they'll own everything I ever do. Like that's there's just so few options. And this is not like I didn't take a bad deal to get my movie made. This is the standard deal.
Everybody, so many people in animation and comics, and at least the visual art side of things, they get so caught up in the Netflix deal or the Hulu deal or the Amazon Prime deal or the idea that they can get their stuff on TV. And having been on the flip side of that, I can tell you that what they have in their head is not the reality. And I think you summed it up perfectly. It's like saying, well, you're basically becoming a Netflix employee. There are benefits, but at the same time, is that really what you want?
Ultimately you don't like, I honestly, it's why you see, I think, shows peter out, with sequels and, as they try to just pump, the life out of everything in that kind of corporate style, because it's just, they don't incentivize people to stay with, properties in a real kind of passionate sense, a lot of the time. Of course, it's like good stuff gets made in this system. Absolutely. You can't knock it. But like, you also can point out just, I don't want to like get too far deep into like Disney's handling of Star Wars, but like,
we can do
corporate assembly line, takes something over. You see a lot of crap get created. I do blame George Lucas straight up. Like when he made the first Star Wars movie, and he was grumpy about giving away the story IP, but he's like, you know what? I'm keeping the toy rights, and they were like, fine, whatever. And then he made billions of dollars of Star Wars toys. Then Hollywood's like, no one gets to keep any.
That's right. Never again. Never again. We own everything. Yeah. And I do think you also bring up the idea. There's really like 3 or 4 major companies that pretty much own every awesome IP that you could think of. And it's amazing what happens. At least in my own experience or my own perspective, is like the farther it moves away from the fan base, the worse the property gets. And Marvel, having worked at Marvel and having been even before working at Marvel, being a fanboy my whole damn life, like, and an artist, like it's so interesting to me how, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, Marvel was on fire, and they did such a good job because they kept a direct line open to the fan. There was at least the appearance, or the at least the ideal relationship where it appeared, the appearance that the fans actually influenced the books, and to a large degree they did. You had the example that I use is like you have Todd McFarlane and David Michelinie create Venom for Amazing Spider-Man. Hey, here's a new villain. It's like a bigger, badder Spider-Man, and he's wearing an alien costume. Awesome. And sure, the writing and the art were spectacular for the time, but it was the fan reaction and the fact that the fans would not let it go that meant Marvel reacted to that, saying, okay, just push out another, even if it was for total corporate greed, like, okay, they want it, let's just shove it down their throat. So hey, here's another Venom series, and then here's some Venom merchandise, here's the toys and the t-shirts. Oh, that's selling, what about a movie? And it fed the fan base, and the fan base ate it up because the fan base appreciated it. And there was always this mild feedback loop. It was never as deep as what you and I are talking about with Web3, how like, embedded we can get now with a community. But there was at least some back and forth. And the minute it went over to Disney, and when I was there, I'll tell you, it was like, at least for the period that I was there, it was like Disney had nothing to do. There was such a defensive mechanism within Marvel to say Disney does not have any business here. Like they're not touching us. We're completely independent. We run our own ship. I mean, when Disney employees or Disney execs would ask for something, they would kind of get the Marvel people would get a little offended and kind of fight back. And then all of a sudden, some of the Disney employees, well, we're just going to put some Disney lawyers over here in this little corner over here. And those desks aren't being used. So, I mean, it is a Disney property. So we'll just bring some some of the Disney tax people
Right.
over here, and they'll just sit in
Yeah.
that corner over there. And sure enough, and even especially after my time when I left, like it's been so absorbed, like this giant Borg warship, that it's just it's there's no connection to the fan base. Similar to what I think what your instincts are with Star Wars. It's like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. It's, I mean, and part of it is just seeing like it is this kind of like, and I think it's hard with movies as big as Star Wars. Again, I've only made a $4 million movie. I can't really like critique like the $200 million movie apparatus, but it's I guess what I would point out is like there is like the Weta workshop. Like it's like there has been models established of like where you can allow like true artistry in a community format like to exist. And I think like what we've even just the way like Discord and Web3 has progressed, how like digital communities can work. Like during the pandemic, people are forced online and forced to like collaborate online in unprecedented ways that I just think it's just like there's so much that's outdated with how things are made. And to be honest with you, before we started this project, I was really skeptical. I'm like, yeah, I'm a director, I'm a control freak. Am I really gonna like want to hear everybody's like ideas? Like, yeah, right. Like this is like, okay, guess I'll do it, because I think NFTs are cool, but it's like, no, I am totally sold on like the community participation I've seen in our Discord server is like, I'm just hooked. I'm addicted. Yeah. Like, so I maybe just one little anecdote just to kind of show how I think both storytelling works and world building works in this medium is, so we went into this project with a loose draft of our first movie. It's like, we were like, okay, we kind of know what we want to do and we're not sharing it. It's like no spoilers, but like, let's start kind of teasing out ideas. And one day this random piece of artwork popped up and it was this really goofy looking guy with an antenna. And I just had this like this really, really small idea, which was like, I think this guy like lives outside this mining colony and he does pirate radio. He actually like interrupts everyone's broadcasts. And it was just this little idea, and we called him the Shriek. And this like it just matched with the art. We just like, something clicked, and this character then like took off in the community. Like people essentially just like came up with like what the Shriek's broadcasting, like all these ideas and how the Shriek works. And then we like responded to that. We created this challenge where we actually then went and recorded some of the Shriek's broadcasts, and we turned those into puzzles, and the puzzles unlocked another thing. And then the Shriek got his own Twitter account, and the Shriek's a character on the Discord. And like the Shriek now is like the biggest celebrity in the Fringe universe. The Shriek just had we just did an invade the Shriek contest where people Photoshop the Shriek's mask onto other sci-fi movies, and we had like hundreds of entries. And the Shriek wasn't even in like our screenplay. Like this is a brand new phenomenon. And we're like, oh my gosh. And now we're inspired by this. And the Shriek absolutely has to be in the movie. And we're figuring this out. And it's making the whole thing like better. And then what's even like cool about this is another Hollywood problem is like, like the sequel situation. You have like sequels are made sequels are like such a priority. Adapting board games, adapting cereal boxes, like anything with name recognition always gets priority, always gets all the money because you need that recognition to break through the noise. And what I see here with Web3 is like by building the world with the fan base ahead of time, you like almost create the first movie together.
That's right.
But when the movie comes out, it actually is the sequel. It's like you've already established, like people will be excited to see the Shriek on screen, but he's never actually existed in a movie. It's like, this is like, we potentially solve like one of the original IP marketing problem, which is huge. It's a big, big problem.
Why on earth do you think that these big corporations like a Disney or Warner Brothers, why can't they do this? Or why do you think they refuse? Is it they refuse, or they don't know how, or they're just like people are stupid?
It doesn't fit into a corporate model because it's so personal. Like I think that to interact, like you have to break down the barriers between like fans and artists, and that doesn't work if it's a bunch of corporate like middlemen. Like you can, I mean, I don't know, there probably is like some sort of gamified corporate experience that someone can event and maybe this works. But like what I found is like, and by the way, this is like, I mean, this project is so much more demanding than I ever expected because I realized it's like, I have to live on this Discord server. I mean, I want to, but it's like, this is how this works.
No,
like,
it's a full-time job.
It's my living room. My shop is just open and anyone can come in and talk.
Yeah.
And it's that people like crave that connection. And I have a feeling like that's what a corporation is going to have difficulty offering, is like genuine like connection to what's going on.
Yeah, I think I also think it's sort of a distance issue, right? Like,
yeah,
there's such an ego associated with people at certain levels, like executives and not everybody. I don't want to necessarily lump everybody into a category, but it's the nature. It's the nature of the industry that the way you get in, it's not just about talent. It's about talent plus networking.
Yeah.
Right. And so to get to a certain level, if they haven't heard of you, then you must not be good yet. Right. Or you're just not in that part of that corner of whatever universe it is. And that's across all departments. That's not just like executive producers. That's everybody.
Yeah.
And that's just the way the game works. And I think there's this failed notion of the rank amateur. And I think they're missing out on a huge opportunity. But I also think that ego, well, I think it's one part ego and one part, I don't know if legally they could actually do it. Right. Because because they're so wrapped up in so many contracts and I mean, you know this, like everything is so legally bound that for them to say, hey, what do you guys think, is actually, from a legal perspective for them, because of the way they've been set up as a traditional structure, it's kind of, they can't do. I mean,
no, you have to rewrite, like, you know, I mean, that's why it's like we've hired like not just programmers to do this, but lawyers. It's like you have to reinvent a legal system to pull this off. And that, I mean, long term, that's I think one of the we don't advertise this, but that's the really kind of big ambition of this project, is that what we want to do. I mean, essentially, I mean, this is not, and I have to be like, as my lawyers have told me, I have to be very clear, this is not part of the NFTs.
Right.
But long term, like the utopian vision is that we create a IP co-op. That, you know, this is not like so many NFT projects. Like, one thing I always have to distinguish is like, yes, this cartoon NFT project you're into, their roadmap is essentially just to sell their IP to Netflix. Like, you realize that what means when they mean make a movie. They mean just sell it. This doesn't like come back to you. Where to me, it's like, no, how this long-term sustains itself is the IP always remains independent, and Web3 allows like your IP to be controlled and orchestrated in revolutionary ways. I mean, this is where the technology really starts to make sense and solve a lot of these problems. But that's something that's gonna take, you know, a year at least to set up with people inventing stuff, because it doesn't exist.
No, and I'm in a lot of DAO networks and a lot of DAO discords, and you know, on the surface, everybody has beautifully written proposals, and then behind the scenes, they kind of don't know what the hell's going on.
Exactly.
And I take a little bit of a, especially with that, because we're the same way, right? We're building an open world where everyone, you know, my dream for our world is basically similar, where everyone owns, you can own the next Spider-Man kind of a thing.
Right.
And the challenge, of course, is that, and I think we found some creative ways to solve it for us, but when, you know, for the people that are going 100% into Web3, where they're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, like nothing from the old world, you know what I mean? Like when it's 100% pure DAO, I think what you're gonna, I'm at least of the mind of like kind of a sit back and wait, because there's going to be so much fire and so many people blowing up. So many projects are not going to make it because they have to figure they have to figure the DAO system out. They have to figure that co-op method out. And I think it's going to take a lot of experimentation. It's going to take a lot of failed projects. It's going to take a lot of pivoting, and it's going to take a shit ton of money. And so it's like, well, I'm for myself, I'm like, okay, well, I'm staying in the mix. I'm talking to people, some brilliant ideas out there, but until it's out there and active and proven, why risk my project? You know what I mean? Like I'm building something for like the next 100 years. So it's like, this is it for me. Like this is like the universe that I'm in. So I'm like, well, I've got time, you know, we're building a ton of stuff, and we're going to be we have some very creative ways that, from our attorneys, like figuring out the tools
Mhm.
that are already in place, that are proven, that are safe, that won't get kind of like turn the head of the SEC in your direction. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
No, we're all about baby steps. It's
yeah,
like we're not going to do anything that's dubious legally, which I mean is I think a little uncommon in this
tell
space.
me, dude.
Why it's like you can see my name, you can Google me, I'm doxxed, I'm not breaking the law. But that, you know, it's like it's really exciting because I think this architecture is going to develop rapidly, and there is a lot of stuff that projects like ours are going to be able to take advantage of, you know, even within a year or two. And I think we're going to see laws in the United States have to be rewritten around a lot of the stuff that the existing legal structure, you know, will change. But at the same time, like you have to stay on the right side of the law in the process.
You have to.
Yeah.
What, just out of curiosity, what was the all-in point for you? Like, what was it that kind of made you like, what was that aha moment when you kind of popped into NFTs? And like, when did you pop in? Like, what was the project where you're like, oh, this is the like, I get this now?
No, I think for us, I mean, we were a little slower than you. I was actually, well, still technically I'm working on stuff for Netflix.
All right.
You know, but I listened to a specific podcast called Interdependence. Have you heard of this one? It's done by a group of musicians who are sort of tackling similar issues in their own industry, and they would just have, and it's very a lot of sci-fi people end up on there, and so like various writers and filmmakers, and it was just these conversations. I started off like listening to NFTs and people talk about IP, and it just felt ridiculous and utopian. Actually, probably one of the turning points for me was listening to the digital minister of Taiwan.
Oh, really?
Whose name is their name, non-binary, is Audrey. I want to say Tong. I'm worried I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. But this is a person who is just like who has essentially Web3 ideas for how like a government could be run.
Oh yeah.
And listening, it was like one of the first people I heard to that was like, this is a person who is like talking about tech in an intelligent way, like optimistically. Like, I think I got taken in by the optimism, because you just hear so much of like, you know, Facebook's going to lead to the end of the world in this way. And like Google's going to be inside our heads. Like there's all this like negative stuff, and everyone's worried about the future. But just discovering this crowd of people who are like really intelligent, thinking about things at a really deep level, who are like straight up optimistic about what the world could be. And then just sort of seeing how my world could be that world. And we have this real kind of DIY heritage with Prospect, where we very much did things on our own terms, you know, as far as the production design, where like we built the infrastructure, and like I run businesses in Seattle. We're always very fiercely independent, that it just like felt like the natural conclusion. And then once you start thinking about it, it takes over, because it's like, why would I do this any other way? Like, this is so much better.
Yeah. It was a slow transition for me too, I think. But you know, I was in New York for almost 2 decades, and I ended up going to a startup meeting, and they were talking about like this technology that could, you know, connect, that could make digital images, you know, unique. And this was like 2013, and I don't remember. I don't know if the name NFT had ever come up. Like it was super early, and like
not in terms of art. Yeah.
And of course, like I left. I was like, I had another art startup at the time, and I left thinking like, man, this is fantastic. But it was such a technical talk. I was like, this is so far away from being able to be implemented. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sure enough, I mean, it was 2013, so it took another 7-8 years.
Oh, I forgot to mention. Yeah, Prospect was actually a Bitcoin distribution company actually bought some rights to Prospect.
Oh, nice. So
I did actually in 2017 at South by Southwest did have someone actually pitch to me what I'm doing now. But at the time I was like, this is ridiculous. Why would anyone, like, this is impossible.
Yeah.
And here we are. Now it's happening. I think they were just early. They were just when the crash happened, and
I mean, once I realized, I think similar to you, like once I realized like, wait, this is a way not only to fund a project, and you know, of course, like, you know, I thought for an artist, the biggest breakthrough, and a fucking artist, like even entrepreneurship, like the biggest breakthrough the first aha moment I had, to be straight up, was secondary sales. Because that for any creative person, any business, that is a holy grail that is impossible to achieve unless you're doing like a software as a service product where you have recurring subscription.
Yeah, right.
It's a subscription. A subscription model is essentially secondary sales on a monthly basis. So the fact that could be tied to artists, I started preaching it to other artists. I was like, you guys have to jump into this. You have to jump into this. Like, this is why sell your work once when you can sell it multiple times? And then of course I started looking internally, and I was like, wait, that also means that I could do that. And then starting to look at the technology, I was like, wait, that means not only could we finally build the world that we want to build, but we actually can open this up, and other people can. There's an ownership. There's something interesting about Web3 in that because it's programmable, it allows you to open it up in a way that traditional contracts can't. Maybe just through because of the pure paperwork that would be involved, or just the effort.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right. But just the idea that you can say, hey, we're gonna mint X number of NFTs, and here's the utility. Just being able to say there's going to be a place on our Discord where you can have lore building, or a lab, as you call it, or something else. That in itself is such a breakthrough. That, the only time we had ever done that in the past, we did the first crowdfunded designer toy back in the almost 2010. So this is like the first crowdsourced designer toy. I designed the shape. Right? I did the product design on the shape, and then what we did is we held a contest from all artists from all over the world. So this guy was from Canada. This is McCoy from Canada. Yeah, and we just, it was a huge, and this is all like supply I got left, but it was a huge experiment in crowdsourcing. Yeah, and the result, similar to I think what you were saying, is the result was I was stunned at the quality. It was so I left that project, that little blanky toy thing, knowing that the designs that people came up with were so much better than I could have ever come up with on my own. Yeah, like bar none. I would have never thought about these designs, and they were so good. And all I had to do was some of the production side of the stuff. You know what I mean? Like the logistics and the manufacturing, but it was brilliant. And I was that sold me on the whole method that I think you're kind of seeing now, right?
No, I just to jump a little back to, just kind of what you were saying about how, and again, that I think is something that's it's important to point out, because it's not obvious, like from the outside of like what the technology is automating, because we get asked, we have this, a fan base that followed us before NFTs started, and then they're like NFTs, like this is like weird and complicated, or they're like very morally against it for other reasons, and like why NFTs? But like when you get into it, it's like, well, because you're like asking me to go back and like use a fax machine, like right. Like it's, what you don't understand is this automates entire industries that prevent independent artists from doing these things. It's what makes like why is no major sci-fi franchise independently owned? Because it takes like a army of lawyers like to orchestrate, and this is what the technology is replacing.
Have you been seeing a lot of pushback on stuff yet?
Well, we, and I think partly like we didn't start out as natives in, like, this is our first NFT project, so it was our very much our first rodeo, and we did everything wrong in the first month, and so we thought we're like, we're filmmakers, we have access to like mainstream media a little bit, so we got like articles, like we launched by getting an article like the Hollywood Reporter and like Mashable, and these like, to us, what are like very reputable sources. We're like, and then the NFT world will like come flocking to us, is how we thought it would work. And we made this trailer and whatever, we launched it, and all we got from those articles was backlash, because the people who were, and it was at the height, I think, of the NFT backlash, like kind of in reaction to a lot of like the scams and stuff that were starting to happen. But we we essentially were talking to the wrong crowd, and instead had to like for a couple of weeks just deal with criticism, which honestly was good, because a lot of people were telling me to ignore it. And I did ignore people who were like, being just trolls and haters, but there were a lot of people who just genuinely were like, I like your movie. Why are you doing this?
Right.
And I'm like, I should be able to answer this question.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for about 2 weeks, just really replying to internet comments, which is like, not necessarily like what anyone advises you to do, but it actually resulted in a lot of, interesting conversations. It really developed actually our environmental perspective on the whole thing, because we had a lot of people really concerned about the environment. And it, before we were like, yeah, we're just going to buy carbon offsets, don't worry about it. And then people had all these concerns about that. And it forced us to actually like reach out to a bunch of experts and figure out the true carbon cost of our mint, which is actually really difficult to do because of how the technology functions. But we were able to actually pin down what I feel is like, a semi-accurate number. And then I can now explain it to people. Like when we mint the drifters, it's going to use as much carbon as a 737 flying from LA to New York. Like essentially, it's going to take a plane trip's worth of carbon. And I think that's a really helpful thing, because people understand like, oh, okay, that's what that is. And it's not nothing, but it quantifies it in a way where, they see headlines about, Bitcoin, like, the entire network taking more power than the country of our, there's so much like terrible clickbait out there. That, it allows us to actually, it's allowed us to really like, figure out a lot of these issues for ourselves. So I didn't mind it, but then we had to figure out, okay, how do we actually talk to people in the NFT space? And it's through this right now. This is how it works. Like, it's word of mouth.
Yeah, it really is. And it's one of the challenges. We did the same thing. We made every mistake. Like the very first thing I did was do Facebook ads, because I have a background in digital marketing. And I was like, well, I'll just serve some ads and I'll bring people in. And my conversion rate on it was so low. I was like, oh boy, this is okay. We're going the long way around the mountain.
Right.
Okay, cool. And but I think, I'm learning as well. Like I think it takes a combination of word of mouth and getting into the NFT, kind of the broader NFT market and just the space at large. But I'm thinking as well that eventually, not necessarily today, but I do think there's going to be a large component of education and bringing people in the slow way as well. Right. I've seen some really smart projects now where they don't necessarily even mention that they mention that it's an NFT, but they don't necessarily call it an NFT project, where they're bringing people in through the gameplay or the concept or whatever the utility is, right? Hey, this is a game, for instance. Boom. And then the way you buy the way you, after they onboard you into the project, even if they give you some NFTs for free, right? The way they post onboarding you into the project, then as you get used to it and you want to actively buy more NFTs, then they have a system now where you can buy either through credit card or through ETH, right? So it's like either something like MoonPay, which basically allows you to buy ETH with credit card, or something, or straight up ETH. And so it's like this, people are finding very creative ways to onboard people through the process, because it really is a difficult process. It's a huge barrier. It's good in that barrier to entry makes us early adopters. And so we get the benefit of finally being an early adopter into a brand new technology, meaning that we're going to be veterans and OGs, and we'll be able to reap the rewards. There's a huge first mover advantage to being early. But there's also a challenge. The challenge is, of course, that what is it? I think we've talked to a few people, and I think the number of wallet holders is like less than 500,000 for NFTs. Like we're talking somewhere between 350 and 500,000 people on the planet.
Right.
On the planet. Right. And so because of that, you also know that a lot of these projects that are launching that you see pop up every 5 minutes on Discord or OpenSea, it's a lot of the same people. Right. So there's you have to jump into the saturation point and kind of capture the people that are already here, because that's the hottest audience, right? The people that have wallets and they're ready to go are the people that are going to sell out your mint. But for long-term growth, you also have to, in my opinion anyway, you have to have a plan post-launch to say, okay, now we're going to start maybe trying to do things to reach out outside of that circle and try to bring people in who may be like NFT curious,
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
no, I think it's like it's been nice. We ended up pushing our mint date like to the end of June when this kind of recent volatility happened, which has been I think so beneficial for a number of reasons. We were going to try to go the end of May, and I don't think we were really ready anyway. But what I found is that we have mainly fans of Prospect end up in our Discord, and they are like, yeah, NFTs. I don't know. Like I'm just like sounds fun and cool. I want to hang out, and then they hang out for a couple weeks, and then it's like, okay, how do I do the NFT thing? But it really does take this, like, I need to feel comfortable like with this group and this community. And then we have like a page full of special instructions like on how to set up a wallet and do all of that. But yeah, I mean, it's a slow process because I mean, like all good technology in the last 10 years has just made our lives more convenient. So to have to jump into something that is somehow feels like 3 steps backwards is like, you're asking a lot. Like nothing else is this hard.
Right? Yeah, it's a real challenge. It's a very. I think that's also why there's so much energy in this space, though. Yeah. There's such a. I've never seen anything like. Well, the last time I saw this stuff, the last time I saw any kind of industry or market feel like this was around 2010 in New York City, post the financial collapse. Right, where all the startups started popping up, and then before that, I was a little too young, but I was already working. I was working on projects for like during the .com boom in 2000, right? And so I was too young to be old enough to be working and being an animation director already, but too young to really take advantage of anything that was going on or really even understand what the hell was going on. You know what I mean? It was definitely more of like a hindsight being 2020 kind of thing.
Right.
And so to see it happen right now is like, oh man, it's crazy to be in the middle of it. And it definitely feels like a whirlwind.
It's why, I mean, obviously when Bitcoin and ETH, dropped a few weeks ago, like a lot of people were panicked and like, the vibe was bad with like good reason, but it didn't ultimately bother me that much because I had spent, at that point, a couple months talking to people like yourself who are like so deeply invested that I'm like, this isn't going away. Like, yeah, of course, there's going to be ups and downs, but there are so many people who are so philosophically committed to what this can do and are going to stay that like, it's not going away. Like,
it's not going,
it's like the 2017 crash. It's not going to happen like that. Like, there's too many people here to stay.
Yeah, and even if it does, it's not going away. Like I don't know ups and downs. I certainly think there's going to be more dips, and certainly I think there's going to be more highs. Right. But the difference now is that from a business standpoint, you have major financial institutions in it now. Right. In fact, you had I mean, the best, and these guys are hardcore. And so like you had like all last year, you had Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of Chase, piss all over crypto for the whole year, the whole year. And then finally it came out that what he had been doing was he was publicly shitting on it, while at the same time buying up as much as he possibly could in Bitcoin.
Suppress the prices as long as possible.
Exactly right. He didn't want to play his hand. These guys are hardcore. So he didn't want to play his hand and say, yeah, it looks great. Like he said, we're not into it. We're not doing it. Right. It's a scam. It's not any good. It's nothing. And then all of a sudden Chase offered it to their high net worth clients as a portfolio option.
Exactly.
So because of that, because of the level of industry now involved in crypto and in NFTs. Visa purchased like a Bored Ape or something. Like you have at a very high level, you have people buying into this. I believe that gives leverage to the market, and that at least long term, you have people who are not going to allow it to crash.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They have enough power and enough collective ability to change law or to stop bad law or to influence whoever they need to influence to ensure that they stay rich. So it's a little bit of like riding the coattails a little bit, which I'm okay with because again, we're early adopters. So it's like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, but I think, yeah, but to the early adopter part though, it is why I feel like I'm sprinting to some degree because it's like I want to try to I mean, and I want to be careful with the word first, because there's a lot of people doing similar things, and I don't know who's first. We're all first.
You're first. Just say you're first. It's okay. Claim it.
I honestly don't even know if I am. It's so hard to keep track of. So it's I guess why I'm trying to be one of the first.
So the technical term that we use here at Adult Fantasy and is to my knowledge. And then you just say we're the best motherfucking team ever, you know.
Yeah. Whatever it is. Here's what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to beat like the big dogs to this game, because I want to show how this can be done towards the benefits of like artists. And to kind of rewind a little bit, like another part of like getting to rewrite the rules of ownership is like when we did the prospect shop, you know, we had all these amazing concept artists, production designers, like people making spaceship, people like artists like committed to our project who are completely locked out of any of the long-term benefits of it. Yeah. And that is totally normal. It's so unusual because occasionally people like myself, directors, writers, they occasionally kind of get to jump the fence a little bit. But like, you know, people who are like just a little lower down in that hierarchy, like, no, it's always a day job for them. And it's like, I want to completely like change that. Like, I want to like make it collective. Like we don't need the corporations. Like, we can band together, and, you know, these artists will also be committed to this project in a way that they would never be committed to like corporate properties. And I want to show that can be done, and hopefully that becomes, you know, more of a norm.
And I also think it adds some longevity, like built-in longevity to the project too. Like if you have an open door to the community and to the fan base, and you allow them to come in and have ownership, or the feeling of ownership, right? Then it floats the project. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh,
you're going to have people who actually can continue to carry on the project. You know, with or without you, really, right?
Totally, yeah. No, I absolutely. This project should live beyond me, and that's how I want to, you know, set it up. Like, and it should be better than I could ever make it on my own. For sure.
And so, real quick, I'm going to tell chat. If any of you guys have any questions for Zeek, feel free to pop them in. We're covering a ton of ground tonight. It's a fantastic conversation. So feel free to pop in questions, and we'll definitely get to chat here in a second. So, Zeek, man. We were talking about this in the green room kind of before everything. We were like, so projects like the Fringe are high effort. Yes. It is obvious. And this is what I love, right? Because we put, for our own project, we don't sleep. I mean, we wake up, we work, and we go to bed.
Oh my gosh,
and we're putting 150% into everything we do. And it's very obvious looking at the Fringe that you guys are doing the same. Like, there's nobody that could look at fringedrifters.com and see the trailer and see the art and see the work and say that this is like a half-ass thing. Like, it's not possible, right?
Yeah.
With that said, you know, as we were discussing, we kind of, sometimes you go on to OpenSea or you see these new projects, and it's like pieces, these things are blowing up that have zero utility, or it's obvious that the teams don't have a background, or have never run a business, or have never launched anything, or there's just you know, as a professional, that there's nothing back there. Right. You know what I mean? You can tell what they're doing, and you're like, well, these guys have no ability to do with it. You know, other teams are like, we're gonna make a feature film, and you're like, yeah, okay. Good luck with that, kid. You know. So how, like, I mean, the question I really want to ask is like, why are you working so hard? But instead of that, instead of that, I was like, how do you, like, how as a, do you have any insight into like as a community, or as in that tier of projects that is actually high effort and high energy? How do you see any insight in like combating that, or do you not worry about it? Or,
I mean, honestly, if anything, and I want to be extremely sensitive to anyone who's lost a lot of value in the recent crash, but this is why I like the bear market. It's going to kill a lot of these bullshit projects.
Yeah.
And I think it's just like, there's the whole NFT casino game where it's just like, can we get everyone to run over to this corner of the room for a minute to, like, you know, create a bunch of value, and then see who can run away like the fastest. And it's, I mean, that's just not the game we're playing. Like
Yeah.
I don't even have any shade for it. It's like whatever that is, like I can't keep up with it. It's dizzying. But that we're here for the long haul. Like
Yeah.
I'm ready to commit my life like to this format as a filmmaker. It's like I can't speak so explicitly, but we are turning down opportunities like in the conventional industry. We are turning down becoming employees of like, major entities to do this. And yeah, that just requires like I'm like fighting for my life is how I feel. Like this is like I have to put every minute of my like waking time into this project to make it as good as it can be, because the potential is like a once in a lifetime like opportunity.
All right, now you're getting, so we talked about kind of getting like the stuff like that from the general kind of, general public
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
But on the reverse side, you just mentioned like, you also have this big mainstream, the Hollywoods, the Netflixes, all that. They certainly know now. I mean, all the like CAA and all these major agencies are now being attracted to the NFT market.
Right.
So are you getting attention from them? Are they like all of a sudden their ears are perking up? Or are you getting interest? Or is it sort of like now that you're over here, you don't want anything to do with it? Like I'm curious on that dynamic, because now that NFTs are getting so much attention.
Oh no, everyone in Hollywood is like fascinated by what we're doing. There's no criticism coming from the industry. Well, I mean, not, I'm sure the Netflix isn't like stoked about creative independence, but like, I mean, for example, like I had Brian Unkless reach out. He's the producer of like the Hunger Games movies and DC Comics, and he is like, hey man, we had this show that we're got dumped for one of a million stupid reasons, like and this happens all the time. This has happened to me where like you have a project with we had a project with Amazon, and they fired the whole department attached to our project because of something going on with their Lord of the Rings show. Unrelated to us. We were developing this project, and suddenly all of our fans, all of the people that were attracted to our work were suddenly gone. We got assigned to someone who like didn't even know who we were, and it just died. And this happens all the time, and it's so stupid. And I'm talking to this guy who is a major Hollywood producer compared to me, dealing with the same bullshit, and he's like, yeah, we are also trying to like set up this show. I'm super inspired by what you're doing. Like, how can we work together? How can you like invite? It was just like all of this kind of love and attention. We had Chris Weitz, who wrote Rogue One. He directed one of the Twilight movies. He has an Oscar for writing about a boy. Like, he's like major Hollywood guy, helped us out with Prospect. Like, we haven't been hitting up a lot of our Hollywood friends, because we were actually like feeling self-conscious. That we're like, we don't want to necessarily want to explain NFTs to everybody yet. Like, we want to wait till we're a little more established. And he like found us. He's like, oh my gosh, I have been thinking about something like this for years. Like, I have so many questions. And that's kind of the response we're getting from like people who are actual creators. It's more like, the general public who's been reading, clickbait headlines about how NFTs are destroying the environment, about how all NFTs are a pyramid scheme and a scam. And they just, in the way that like the same way that like the energy that fuels tribal politics, like just of like NFTs are a trigger bad word and you're doing NFTs. But what I have found is that people will give me like 15 minutes, which is really hard. But if they will give me 15 minutes, I can like essentially say, like, explain to them, this is how this revolutions my life as an independent artist. We did a big Twitter Spaces with a total NFT skeptic at Mashable, and it was awesome. It went really well, and not that we didn't convince the guy to buy NFTs at the end of it, but like he was like, yeah, if what you're doing works, this whole thing makes sense. What I'm seeing with all these rugs and with all this like anonymity and all this like scammy stuff, deserves criticism, like straight up. Yeah. But you have shown like a way that this could actually like lead to a different way for making stuff and for involving people. So there's been some really positive interactions, but they've been very hard fought. One thing that I'm considering doing, and I'm glad I've waited because I don't think I was ready, but like we have quite a following on Reddit for Prospect. Like that's one of our platforms that's friendliest. But I have not mentioned our project on Reddit because Reddit is notoriously anti-NFT.
Yeah.
But I feel like in a week or two, I'll be ready to throw up an AMA and sort of just take the punches. And I'm sure 90% of it will be just like an avalanche of hate.
Oh yeah.
But I think I'm ready to win over a solid like 10% I can convert to the cause.
That's awesome, man. I think that's ballsy, and I think it's also what you have to do. It's just going to make you a better leader and a better runner.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like the punches are always going to come, and they're always going to be there. But I think there's no denying. It's interesting. You were mentioning this about some of these people coming your way, and what I was thinking was how it's amazing how a technology can kind of feed the daydream of every creative. Like we've all had this.
Yeah.
We've all been like, oh man, maybe what if I could just like do it my way and do the thing that I want to do and just like, actually me and the fans or me and the community and build it together. And like, it's such a basic thought. I mean, we've all had it. And then reality sets in, and you know what I mean? And you're like, okay, well, this is the way it's going to work. It's sort of like the, what does it say? Like, if you like magic, don't become a magician.
Right.
But I think this kind of gives that back a little bit. I mean, it's certainly not easy, and it's a tremendous amount of work. In fact, like I'm curious, like beyond, like you have, I think, an interesting challenge in that not only do you have the heavy lift of having to create the film, which is a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. But you're also creating an NFT project and having to manage that as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I learned real quick, like, and you mentioned it earlier in our conversation, like, I mean, once we started hopping on Discord and actually launching our community, we learned real fast that it's pretty much where it's all day, every day. It's where you live. Even when it's quiet, you're there all day. Yeah. You're doing stuff all day.
No.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not in your general talking, then you're in DMs talking, and trying to connect and do things for your community. So how do you manage that right now?
Poorly. The other context for me personally is I had my first child born in December.
Hey, mazel tov.
Yeah, thank you. So I've had essentially two babies. I had twins. One's an NFT project, one's a human being, which the only complementary aspect of that is when I'm with her, like, the digital world doesn't exist. It's like she is just purely human in the moment. Like, I'm just like, I throw my phone across the room and I'm just with my baby. And that's like actually probably what fuels me then to get back on Discord for like a few more hours. But yeah, I mean, we're exhausted. I think the thing is, we're like long-term, we'll need to set this up into like a sustainable structure. And I think what I have seen, what I think the path is going to be is to truly integrate all the creative processes. It's not like, for us, it's like we are going to turn the making of a movie into like kind of a festival. I don't know what the right metaphor is actually. It's like a music festival, but it lasts 9 months. Like, it's like, well, I don't know what it is, but like we are going to turn the making of movie into like an experience, an ongoing experience that people are a part of. So it's not like I'm having to like silo my life into things like I'm making the movie over here and we're also trying to like play an NFT world over here. Like, it has to be integrated. Like, we truly, it's like when I say we're going to do a spaceship lab, that's how we're going to design the spaceships in the movie. That's something I would be doing by myself anyway, but I'm just going to include everybody and try to have a lot of fun doing it. And it's going to take more people, it's going to take more people who to be on Discord full time. I mean, part of also what makes this project for us possible, and what was one of the things that I was kind of having to explain specifically to this guy, Brian, this big Hollywood producer, is that like I was fortunate enough to already be running an art collective in Seattle. This was a group of roughly 20 artists or so that were kind of stemming from a prospect heritage that had stuck together. And it has been amazing to see how this art collective has found just like a total like life and purpose in this project, because it requires everybody. Like probably like the best example is our costume designer, Aiden, who's like a brilliant, like legit pro costume designer, like makes puzzles like for the community. She's like makes really awesome puzzles.
Oh, that's cool.
And this is just something that like happened, and it's a weird need we didn't know that we needed, and she jumped in and could do it. And like that's really what it takes, is like a large group of people who do have a shared vision and who are on the same page. And we were fortunate to have already sort of built that little core, and it's going to have to get bigger. And then people have already popped up in our community that are going to help us do it. And I think it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. It's never going to not be like completely exhausting, I don't think. So I do have to figure out, how to take a day off, but that problem I've not solved.
I'm still trying to figure that out as well. I don't know how that works.
For sure.
Let's check out chat. Let's see who's here tonight. J-Raw, what's up, man? How you doing? He says, what's going down? Willie D, happy evening all. What's up, Willie D? How you doing?
Hey.
Bad Kitty, how are you? Welcome. J-Raw says, what's up, Todd? What's up, Zeek? Such a dope name.
Thank you.
Yeah, you kind of have, you almost have a Discord name where I was like, well, is it his Discord name?
I think that's why I never came up with like a separate Discord name. We were trying to be like a doxed project, but I'm like, my name stands out. It works.
It's pretty good. It's excellent.
Branding.
It's good. What's up, Hype? Hype says, hi.
Hey.
Hype's awesome. Alex, what's up, Alex? Well put. I don't remember what that was about. Crispy, what's up, Crispy Papa? Hey, all, sorry I'm late. No worries. You're always
I like
on
your
time.
PFP, Crispy.
That's awesome. So hope I didn't miss the movie. No worries. Alex says this has been great. It's awesome. And I know Dusty's been talking about goblins. There's maybe a project out there that he's referring to. And then he says 100% the bear market benefits projects like ours. Yeah, 100% really does. And then
the ones that are still standing after this are the ones you want to be in.
I think that's 100% true. And I think I do believe that. Well, you know what's interesting, and Alex says congratulations, by the way, on the baby, which is awesome. I do think one of the things that benefits us being so early is that being OG in the space takes 12 months.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm not that I personally consider myself. I mean, I feel like it took me at least 10 years before I felt like even remotely like a veteran in animation.
Sure.
And I still was not even anywhere near where I would consider myself, anything special. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the NFT space, by the time I got in at the beginning of last year, and people that were in it from like 2018 or 2020 were OGs. Like they were just like these knowledgeable mythic beasts. And now that we have a project launched and we're out there and we're still out there and we're still pushing stuff, right? That mantle kind of gets passed, and it happens so fast that I think it's really interesting how because of the way the market works and because we're so early and it's a bear market, you're going to have all of this stuff get flushed out, as you mentioned. And then, but for people like us, people who actually have real projects that have done this before, that know what it takes to build at least most of what we're trying to build, or a large portion of what we're trying to build. Right. Like we know that we're going to be here. We know we're going to be here. And so once all the other stuff gets fleshed out, that 2 or 3 years from now, when you're on your next film, or the world of Fringe has blown out so wide that there's all this activity going on, like it has no choice, in my opinion anyway, it doesn't have any choice but to succeed, because it's going to be the last man standing. It'll be like, oh, well, there's these massive projects that raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and then there's these other projects that did really well or pretty decently, but they're still here. Yeah. You know, hey, maybe you don't make $500 million from a seed raise, which is
Yeah.
insane. But you know, it doesn't matter. Like, you're still there and you're still doing stuff, right? And that in itself is I think going to be a massive magnet for the next wave that comes in and the next bull market. That next bull market, like the one that I came in and the one that you came in on, like when it comes back in another, I think probably another couple of years, like a massive bull run.
Yeah.
Like we're like, come on, doors open. You know?
Yeah.
And everything will be set up.
I think so.
And Mastiff says, hey, great session. Mastiff, thank you, man. Welcome. And Zeek, I gotta say, man, this has been a fantastic conversation.
Likewise, yeah. I feel like we're very much have the same perspective on a big issue that I think is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. It's really, really great to connect.
For sure. And this is why I love doing this stuff, because it's so important for people, especially when you find like-minded people in the same corner of the space.
Totally.
Because sharing information is what it's about. And you know, no project is an island, especially not right now. And this is why I love it, you know.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm so glad we connected, and I hope we continue this. Like, I think there's a lot of overlap in our communities.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so with that, what I'll say is to everybody, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you so much for visiting and checking us out at Evening Alpha. If you haven't yet, please go check out Fringe. You can find it at fringedrifters.com. The project is fantastic. And it's just going to get better. And come. Our
Discord is open. We're big on that. We feel like we want to, like, you'll see world building in action starting now. We're not waiting till after the mint. So all the stuff I'm talking about, like, it's happening. The community's there. Please come say hi.
Awesome. And on our side, usually after Evening Alpha, you can head over to the Adult Fantasy Discord. We have games. We hang out. I usually get my ass kicked, but that's okay. That's kind of what it's about. With that, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you all for coming. We will see you next time. Take care. And yeah.